Ruben from Bulgaria?
Oh, it's me.
Hey,
Oh, hi.
thanks for waiting.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes,
Thanks for
come
waiting.
Hi. This is my first time, and I'm lucky because I have two of my favorite hosts.
Oh, thank you.
I'm an atheist. I have, the main reason I'm calling is actually to get advice from you guys because I've been arguing with religious people about certain issues recently, and sometimes I just feel stuck after certain things that they say. So the thing I'm calling about is religious teaching, whether it's child abuse or not. So I presented the general arguments that people usually give, that this makes children think less critically, and in the more severe forms, it can even lead to children being totally disconnected from reality.
Right.
So the main criticism I got, and some of that criticism came from atheists, was that, first of all, by calling religious indoctrination child abuse, I'm watering down the actual word, because child abuse should be reserved for more serious actions, like physical abuse, rape, and so on. And also they told me that the legal definition of the word is what should be taken seriously. So child abuse should be something punishable by crime, and they asked me, so do you want to punish parents who teach their children religion the same way you punish, parents who rape their children? Should you take away children from those parents? And, my main point was that it should be not an all or none phenomenon, but rather, there are severe forms of child abuse and light forms.
Yeah.
Sure. Real quickly, and I don't know if we're getting an echo because I heard background noise, but there's a couple of things that we need to kind of hit real quick, and one is that religion isn't one thing. Not all religious teachings are the same, and not all religious teachings have the same impact. So it's kind of dishonest to discuss religion as a whole in this context. And also, the same thing is true for child abuse. It doesn't always take on the same forms or have the same degree of consequences. Beating or raping a child, those are clear examples of child abuse, but there's mental abuse as well. Yeah. And I would say that if you spent the first 5 years of your child's life teaching them that green was red and red was green as some kind of sociological experiment or whatever, that's something that can be repaired later on fairly easily, but it is a form of child abuse. For the people who are saying that claiming some religious indoctrination is child abuse is watering it down, they simply don't understand the impact that people can have on children in their formative years. And we're not saying that teaching somebody about, the Noah story is child abuse. The people who are identifying specific religious teachings as child abuse are talking about things like teaching a child that they're born bad, that they are inherently evil, that they are destined for hell. And if you go back to the Texas Free Thought Convention interviews that I did, Marlene Winnell has written a book, and she's a psychologist who's got a practice and has been specifically dealing with people suffering from something that she's called religious trauma syndrome. I dare those people who are saying that this isn't child abuse to go up to those individuals who are in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, who have been atheists for 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, who are still traumatized and paralyzed by fear because they have been ostracized from their support structure and their family and friends, and because they still have nightmares about claims of hell and other things. You're right to point out that the fallacies that are used to bolster religion are harmful to a developing individual's brain, because it sets up a barrier between them and an actual discovery of reality. It prevents them from exercising critical thinking skills. Now, the idea that we need to punish a rapist equally to somebody who's abusive in tone is just silly. I mean, there are people who have their kids taken away for some period of time because the home environment is not conducive to raising a child, but they get them back. You don't give them back to a rapist. So it's just kind of absurd to me that people would think that religion needs to be one thing, child abuse needs to be only one thing, and the punishment for child abuse needs to be only one thing. There's a broader spectrum here.
Yeah, I think the people that are claiming that somehow this has to be on the same level as rape or physical abuse of a child in order to qualify as abuse, I think they're the ones engaging in a straw man argument here. I think there, as Matt said, there's different levels of abuse, but I would also argue that if, for example, in the Catholic Church, where you set the priests up as like the ultimate moral authority in the church, and you tell kids that they have to submit to these guys in robes, and whatever they do is coming from God, and then this guy abuses them. Essentially, what you've done is you've set up a child to accept this authority figure, who doesn't really warrant that kind of acceptance, but you've really set a kid up for abuse, and especially when everyone in the parish is so deferential toward these guys, and everybody is so busy protecting the church that they forget that they're supposed to be protecting their children.
Yeah, I would say that a lot of religious teachings are on par with the level of harm in a different realm, and that is with regard to anti-vaxxers. They are intentionally compromising the physical immune system of their children, thereby poisoning the rest through herd immunity. And the people who are teaching their children the sort of anti-critical thinking skills and dogmatic assertions about religion are compromising their children's mental immune system and making them susceptible to abuse, to cons, to an overdependence and reliance upon authority figures. I'm just baffled that people can think that this isn't somehow harmful. And the people who think that, all harm is equal, I think they're shortchanging the real issue here.
Well, and anybody that says that this is trivial, I mean, you mentioned Marlene Winnell and her religious trauma syndrome. I mean, you should see our email list sometimes. We get emails from people saying, hey, I'm an atheist, and I've been an atheist for a few years now, and I don't believe there's a God, but I can't get over my fear of hell. How do you get past that? Does that ever get better?
What I find particularly offensive, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there, but what I find particularly offensive is that here's an individual whose brain has been polluted and poisoned by a particularly dastardly religious concept. And they have freed their mind from a lot of this stuff, but there's still this nagging thing clinging on. And there are asses out there who will look at that and say, see, somewhere in your subconscious level, all this is true. I see it over and over again. It drives me absolutely bonkers that somebody said that religion basically poisons you and then dangles the antidote in front of you. And this is kind of what they're doing in a sense in this context is you poison your mind, and then when you suffer the consequences of that poison, they say, see, and we've got the cure, by the way. No, they don't have a cure. They are the poison. And while I do not claim that all religious teaching of children is necessarily child abuse, a great quantity of it is, to varying degrees. Some of it is rather innocent and easy to overcome in much the same way that certain stories about the holiday season that may not be true are relatively easy to overcome. I mean, because in your real life, you're going to come up against things that are going to immediately expose those false teachings and will kind of be self-correcting. And so it'll be, I believe something stupid for a while. All of us have believed something stupid for a while. There's an aspect where this is actually positive because it teaches you the process of learning and discovering what was wrong. There are other aspects of religious teaching that specifically set up barriers to that kind of discovery, and that is one aspect of what I would call child abuse.
I absolutely agree. Obviously, the one last thing that I want to ask, because they also brought it up, is some people just say, okay, it's true that some religious teaching can be child abuse, but so can other teaching as well. And they
They're
say
right.
that they give John Stuart Mill as an example. They say, he was brought up, his dad taught him, made him study science and philosophy all day, and he didn't have the option to have a normal childhood. So even science can be child abuse sometimes. What makes religion so different? Why? I mean, I obviously said that the frequency of religious indoctrination being child abuse is a lot higher, but can we say anything other than the frequency? Can we bring up any qualitative difference between
I don't know of
religious and other forms of child indoctrination?
I don't know of anybody who's is using science to indoctrinate their children into believing false things. I mean, that could be the case, but I don't think that if that is the case, then I don't think it's a very broad thing that's going on. And the other thing is that even in cases where it's obvious that parents are teaching their children patently false beliefs, people tend to look the other way. They tend to look the other way when somebody says, hey, the Bible says spare the rod, spoil the child, so I'm going to beat the hell out of my kids, and we'll call it discipline. I mean, the state of Texas specifically does that. And so, religion gets a pass on a lot of things that we wouldn't accept from anything else.
Yeah,
so there's a huge difference.
And to kind of answer a question that you brought up earlier about this idea of whether or not we would want all religious people put in jail or their kids taken away, of course not. That's insane. You go after the problems wherever they exist. If there's somebody who is what we're saying is that, as Jen just pointed out, religion tends to get a pass. And that's one of the reasons why a lot of people are pointing out the abusive nature of some religious teachings, because it's time for them to stop getting a pass. If somebody is engaging in child abuse with regard to forcing their children to do nothing but study science and have no fun or whatever else, then that's something that should be addressed as well. But I'm with Jen on the I don't think that that's being used to lead somebody to a false belief. So it's there may not be an easy answer here. The point is that religion shouldn't get a pass, and it does. It does across the board. This assumption that religious people are somehow better or immune from criticism or couldn't possibly be doing damage to their children. This is the reason why the pedophile scandals in churches has gone unchecked for so long. It's because religion gets a pass from the top down. Yeah.
He couldn't possibly have molested a child. He's a man of God.
I just can't believe that he would do that. Well, believe it, he did. Mm-hmm. And people are failing as parents.
Well, I think the difference between the rapes and the religious teachings is that in the first case, the rapers knew that they were doing something wrong, but from the perspective of the parent who's teaching religion to their children, they're not doing anything wrong. In fact, they think they're doing something wrong if they don't teach religion, because, I mean, they are saving the child's soul after all, and how can we convince them I just don't see a way to approach this problem other than just raising awareness, but I don't think that's very effective.
I think that's what you do.
Yeah.
That's all you can do.
There are some issues where we're just going to have to wait for a generation or two to die off. As unfortunate as that is, you have to change the world around them. You can't always change the individuals. And I'd point out, by the way, that there are some pedophiles, in fact, probably quite a few, who do not think that they're doing anything wrong. That they think that their brain is so screwed up that they believe that they're doing something that is not necessarily wrong. They understand that society generally disagrees with it, but it's a confused perspective. But and we've got like 25 minutes left in the show with the short format, so I got to let you go. But thanks a lot for the call.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right.